Hi, Sunday. Hi, Alimat.
Hello, TJ.
Hi, John.
Hello.
How
Good
you?
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Wonderful.
How's the day been?
Great.
Good. Good. Thanks for joining very early. I just made you a co-host, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can grab the screen at any point in time. Right. I believe we're going to see Harry, maybe very quickly.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be a nice surprise. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be recorded. Once we start, we still have about 3-4 minutes thereabouts. So we're going to record it, and I'll make that available to you, by the way.
Okay.
Always on the treadmill. You're on the treadmill again today.
Yeah, I'll probably stop, so that people don't.
That's fine. That makes it relaxed anyways. I'm just saying, right?
Okay. Yeah. Let me practice sharing the right screen. Hang on. Good, right?
Yeah. Good. How is the weather over there?
What's that?
I said, how is your weather?
Ooh, perfecto. It's a classic, wonderful northeast fall day.
Mhm.
You know, bright sun, blue sky,
Yeah.
colorful leaves, and you know, in the 60s.
Good.
So I don't know what that is in centigrade, like 12, 13, maybe 15. I
Wow.
don't know.
Wow. I haven't actually even stepped out today, but I can see it's kind of sunny a little bit, but I haven't stepped out. I've got some mails, I haven't even picked them up. That's what happens to me sometimes, 2 days in a row, and I'm not opening my door. Oh, I can see your bright weather as well.
A little bit, yeah.
Beautiful and sunny.
Yeah.
Good.
Should we let people in? When I see the admit people.
Yeah. Oh, okay, we have more people. Yeah. I guess it's also a working day for most people.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone earlier today, and she said to me that she will still be at work, but she's going to dial in. Regardless, she's going to dial in. And luckily for her, she's going to be in the meeting that she doesn't have to, be active in. So she's going to dial in. Okay, that's good.
One of those questionable meetings.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you should mention that to everybody else in the meeting. Think about, why do we have this meeting? Why am I here?
Why am I here, right?
Can we change the meeting policy? Yeah.
I remember when I was in Toyota, we had something called the lean meeting, right? So the lean meeting is just, if I don't be in that meeting, don't invite me. If you don't have an agenda for that meeting, please don't invite me. If that meeting cannot be done in 30 minutes, please don't invite me. And it actually worked, because you realize that sometimes you're probably in a meeting for the most part of the day. Okay, we have Harry now. Alrighty. And I'm gonna make him a co-host as well.
Teejay, good evening from South Africa.
Hi.
Do you hear me?
We can hear you very well.
Oh, okay. Thanks, man.
Good. And good to have you here, Harry.
Teejay, it's just short. I have to say to you, in Johannesburg, it's not uncommon to have load shedding, which means power down. So the Wi-Fi is on a converter at the moment. My girlfriend is holding her phone with a light. So
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about.
Okay. Okay. Cheers to that, man.
Yeah.
I absolutely understand that. So it's not new to me, right?
Yeah, it was funny. I was in Stellenbosch in Cape Town a couple months ago, and they at least announced when it was, but it was cool because the restaurants could all, like, they kick over and they know it's going to happen, and they're all right. Lights, here's some candles, here's some emergency lights, here's some wine.
No, you know what I like to say? I just said it because you have to. I'm in our bedroom at the moment, so the room next to us, there's like 12 to 15 people now. And I just said, what I love about South Africa is at 10 o'clock in the evening today, they make it so cozy because everything gets dark and we put on the candles, and it's like just improvise. Hey, that's what you do. Yeah, absolutely, man.
Let me help you flesh that out. Everything gets dark artificially, right?
Nevertheless, I am very happy to be. I know, TJ, I said, because I have so many guests over here with Natasha.
Yeah.
We plan another day together. Then I will come here for a longer time. And I was just checking in. I see that we already have 42 participants.
Yeah.
And I made you, and people who know me, and I'm looking at Natasha now, when I make a promise, I live up to it. So I will make another moment in time where we can do a session, even with John again, right? I mean, but then I will be there for the full session. I really would like that, especially for the connection that we have. We have on our side of the world, let me put it like this.
Yeah.
We have on November 10, we have an Agnostic Agile conference.
You haven't
across.
sent me those materials. You said you were going to send me those things for that event, right? You haven't sent it.
I will send it to you, and I hope you will share it with all the participants.
Absolutely.
In the meanwhile, 48. It's all remote, and it is 3 hours in Australia Pacific, as 3 hours in EMEA, and it is 3 hours in Latin America, 3 hours in China. We try to bring everything together, all remote.
Okay.
And because of what you said to me, about the connection, also the fact that you are connecting African and USA communities together, we do the same. So we're going to make this work.
Absolutely. Okay. So let's shoot very quickly because of time. Thank you, John, for being here. Thank you, Ari, as well. So I will go through this very quickly. This is going to be very informal. But the very first thing is for everybody joining, we would really appreciate not to make a mistake by unmuting yourself. So please, if you're not speaking, right, do not mute. This is intentional to keep it as a meeting. We could as well go for the webinar route, but we want to do individuals and interactions. We want to do the face-to-face communications. And we're going to hear from John and Harry. They will shed more light to all of this, all of these things to us today. So we're going to have a quick introduction. Then we'll have the time for John and Harry. Harry might be stepping out, shortly after, a while, but we're going to have John all through. But I can promise you that we're going to have an event where hopefully we're going to have longer time for John and also for Harry at the same time. Right. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I think I'm allowed to do that, right? So we're going to the business of the day, then we're going to Q&A session. And it is important for you to get to know about, oh, by the way, this event is going to resume, yeah. Okay, so this is a recorded event, all right, just so everybody knows. I like to seek for everybody's consent. So we have John here and we have Harry. So this is organized by Zeal System, a small consulting firm here in Texas and of course in Lagos, Nigeria as well. And I'm going to be your host for today. Yes. And my name is Olatunji Adedayo. And everybody calls me TJ, right? So it's okay for you to call me TJ. And you can see my background from the flags. You can see what I do. You can see the organizations I've been able to work with. So I've been privileged to work with all of these organizations in the last 18 years, right? So, and we have John Kern here. John Kern is one of the co-authors of the Agile Manifesto. And this is the way I like to describe it. Agile has put food on most people's table all over the world, if you realize what I'm talking about. This simple thing called Agile has actually created quite a lot of jobs for millions of people all over the world, including myself. So when I have the opportunity to speak with people like John and Ari, I do not take that for granted. So in their own busy schedule, they have decided to come here today and shed more light about the Agile mindset and how you can succeed, right, with that Agile mindset. So this is a brief introduction about John, and I'm sure he's going to talk about himself very quickly. And we equally have Ari, who is also a co-author of the Agile Manifesto, right? He's decided to give us some time today, but we're going to have more of his time in another edition. So you can stay tuned for that. And this is also, I know it's a lot to read, but of course, this is also some information about Ari as well. So I'm going to leave it for John and Harry. And like I said, please keep this conversation mute for everyone if you're not speaking, so that doesn't create some sort of chaos. And if you have to ask questions at a time dedicated for Q&A, please put that in the chat box. Yes, put that in the chat box. I'll try as much as possible to project those questions if I can. And of course, John can also pick those questions as well. Harry can do the same. I will be glad to answer your questions. So thank you, Harry. Thank you, John, for joining. Over to you.
Thanks, TJ. Happy to be here, and I'll kind of pick up with same sort of slide share. And yeah, so I don't know that I really want to talk about myself, but yeah, I've been at this for a while, and Ari and I first met back in Snowbird 20 years ago. So we have some fun things that we can share with you there. And I think a little bit around what we might mean by mindset, and then some Q&A that please feel free to put questions in chat, and hopefully TJ will be able to kind of wrangle them and wrestle them, and we'll figure out how to, you know, some people we might want to bring off mute to better ask the question. But yeah, I don't know, like I'm an aerospace engineer by training, I'll just say that. And I fell into software after doing cruise missile, doing fighters, simulations, centrifuges, flat spins with F-14s like Top Gun in the original Top Gun. So I kind of use software as a tool, not as the end, but rather as a way to get to some results. So that's kind of my background. And I've built companies and sold companies and helped teams produce software. And I have a running production software for basically for firefighters and for people to protect buildings and things like that. So I actively code, and, you know, in a very small way now on production software. And Ari, do you want to say something? I know you have a short, oh, you got lights now.
Yeah, it just came back on. It's always a surprise here. It just came back on. Yeah, thanks, John. I would like, okay, a couple of things. I would like to start with quoting you, actually. You know, I don't know how most of you people feel it, but in the Agile world, you meet a lot of big egos that tell you that you're wrong, and they have the certificates and they are awesome. And then you talk about it and they'll say, no, it's not true. And what John, so I think it was John a year and a half ago when we had the 20 years anniversary, that you said somewhere in, you know, we had one of those fireside chats on, you know, or remote COVID times, or, you know, remote and stuff. And you said, when we walked into that room, we left our egos at the door. And that's what I would like to give to everybody here. I can only speak from my side, you know. For me, Agile started in 1994, and it was in the community, learning from each other. And okay, you messed up here. Oh, you got a solution. I got a solution. Or I messed up here, and you got a solution. And listening and learning. And I think that's what brought Agile today where it is. So I would like to invite everybody to listen, to understand, and to take from other people's, not just John and me, but from other people's learnings. Hey, what can I do with it, instead of starting fighting it? Because that happens to me. I don't know, Jan, about you, but it happens to me all the time. No, that's not true. And no, you know, those kind. Well, it's my experience, right? And you can use it to your benefit. You cannot use it. That's fine. But try to learn from other people's experience. That's what I always, even today, try to do. We were actually talking with, you know, my brothers-in-law and, you know, other family on the other side of the wall. And Natasha just said, oh, do you remember that Ari started his career as a midwife? and they were looking at like, a what, and then I got into the military. It's almost the same. And then I got into software development, which is also almost the same. And it's not, of course, right? But you can keep your learnings from every single thing that you do, from every person that you meet. And we can talk about agile mindset forever, but I think being open to learn is the most important aspect of the agile mindset. Listen to each other to understand. And John, I would like to give it back to you here. Hopefully next time we can do it again together and find a way. Maybe I can invite you into the Agnostic Agile conference in the next edition. That would be awesome. TJ, we have our agreement, right? So that's what we do. I'm going back to my family here in South Africa, having a great time. And I hope to see you all. Maybe, how many people do we have at the moment? Let me quickly check. 92 people. I mean, that's awesome, right? So let's do it. The conference on November 10, you can find it on the Agnostic Agile, agnosticagile.org website. It's a remote conference and there are very interesting speakers, but it's also about bringing people from all over the world together for learning. And that's what I would like to give. So I would like to invite everybody now, listen to John, ask him questions, and not listen to his standard story, but ask questions, because you can say, oh, you know, I have this situation. What do you think? And then you get answers, because that man has a massive amount of experience and take the benefit from it. So I wish you all an awesome Texas afternoon. I don't know where you are. An awesome Texas afternoon. I will finalize my South African evening here with the family. And TJ will be in touch. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you,
I really
Aaron.
appreciate that.
Thanks, John, for bringing me in.
Absolutely.
Thanks for
Okay, guys.
too. See you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, so just Ari had a schedule conflict at the last minute, and anyway, he sends his regard, as you just heard, and we'll definitely do a redo. But one of the simplest ways I would like to introduce and leave a little tiny way to think about Agile is mind the gap. And it's sort of a play on words. There's a gap between the platform of a train, or when you're stepping onto a boat, or anything like that. And for me, it's a simple way to think about Agile, in that there's the critical thing to be aware of is, from the time that you do something, make a decision, take an action, write a piece of code, decide to build a feature, decide to produce a product, and get some results. What's the gap in time between that? Because the longer the gap, the bigger you're making a bet, potentially the larger the risk. So I like to think of this from a perspective of whether it's down and dirty unit testing, the gap in time could be seconds from writing code to getting a test result, all the way to building even a feature and deploying it. So that's my simple way to think about Agile, is reduce the gap in time between doing something and getting the feedback that you need. But I'm going to guess many of you were young 20 years ago. I was a young man when I was there, still am. But you might not even know what was going on. Why did we even meet? And a little bit of context might help. I personally was doing Defense Department work, or had been doing it. By this time, I started another company with Peter Code called TogetherSoft, and we were building software for developers. But I had my own company. I had worked in Defense Department world for over a decade, and that's really kind of what led me to a lot of what's in the Agile Manifesto, is that experience with what we're known as large, heavyweight process. You're probably familiar with waterfall. You may have never lived it, maybe you do live it, but it was a thing. And at the time, large companies like Rational, there was only a couple, IBM, Rational, that introduced something that looks a lot like SAFe, but it was called Rational Unified Process. There was this big marketing beast pushing a big heavyweight process. And there were a handful of us doing our own. I started my own light. I think the first time I wrote about my own lightweight, we didn't call it Agile then, process, was in some Lotus Notes book for God knows why. Oh, because my brother wrote it. So I wrote a chapter on a, you know, kind of a lightweight process that I developed doing these large projects with Defense Department, because it didn't make sense to do things in such a non-agile way. So back then, there were a handful of practitioners that Uncle Bob, who he's not in the picture, but I believe he was the one that had a email list that wanted to get people together that had various techniques. XP, you're probably familiar with XP. I was doing a combination of XP and feature-driven development, FDD, which sounds like behavior-driven development, but FDD, Alistair was doing whatever he was doing, I forget, crystal methodologies. And, you know, so Ari, I learned from Ari, DSDM, never heard of it. I never heard of Scrum. So, oh, okay. So we all came together with a bunch of smaller kind of lightweight methods that seemed to have success and didn't have the market power. So none of us were as big as, you know, IBM or Rational at the time. So that was what was going on. There's a lot of small, successful process types. We call it, you know, initially it was known as the Lightweight Methodology Conference. And then later we changed it humorously. Nobody wanted to be called a lightweight, because at least in the US, I don't know about Europe and other, lightweight, you know, is sort of a bit of a derogatory term. Maybe you're weak, or maybe you can't drink as much, or anyway, lightweight is not something that you want to think of as a good term. So we set about thinking of another term, and the beauty, I think, to a person, nobody knows exactly how it came about. And there's a lot of things about the Agile Manifesto that are like this. Nobody really knows. And that's kind of a wonderful thing, because I was doing Agile fighter, enhanced fighter maneuverability, like an Agile aircraft versus a big bomber, or, you know, big aircraft carrier is not very agile. So either the term was put out there and I corroborated, yeah, that works for me, because that's what we're trying to help teams be: more agile, more nimble, more able to adapt, less prescriptive, less doing giant, huge steps like waterfall. So somehow Agile was tossed out there as a different name, and, you know, that's how it came about. And when we were leaving we drank beer, we had some meetings, we drank more beer, we went skiing, we had some meetings, drank more beer. Some people went hiking, snowshoeing, but you can see I took a picture of Jim Highsmith, and Alistair's in the back in the yellow. Beautiful skiing, I will say. But yeah, when we were wrapping up and came up with, you can kind of see we're on the verge of the 4 main bullet points on the website there. And I think Ward, who is the inventor of the wiki, said, hey, do you want me to put that up on the web? Mind you, this is 2001. You know, like .com and all that stuff. Yeah, sure, why not? Might as well. We had no idea what was going to happen, right? So it's not like we knew this was going to be an awesome success and everybody's just going to, you know, raise a glass to this wonderful 4 bullets on a web page. But it turned out to, I think, hit a resonant frequency with so many people that it unleashed almost almost like an inner, I like to think of it as on a very, 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 very humble basis, a bit like the United States, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the freeing of, you know, thousands or tens of thousands, in the Agile case, seemingly millions of people to think a new way about development. And you know, that's an inspiring notion to have been fortunate enough to have had a part of that. And I like to point out, I didn't really think about it when we wrote this, but even the very top of the manifesto is humble. It doesn't say, okay, we figured it out, we're going to pronounce the answer. It's very humble in that it says we're still uncovering. You know, it's not like we finished, or it's not like it's done. And the humility with this phrase of and doing it and helping others do it, right? That's learning. That's actually trying to get things done is where you learn. And I'll even say at the bottom, you know, sort of we left, some people might think of it as a bit ambiguous or some what you might call wiggle room. There's a spectrum of, you know, I love process and tools. I built tools and sold tools, but the people are way more important. You know, one of the mantras we had at TogetherSoft, and I learned from Peter Code, frequent, tangible, working results, AKA working software. In my Defense Department days, of course, comprehensive docs, big documents, things like that. I was like, this is stupid. I'm a taxpayer. Why am I wasting my time writing these giant docs that nobody will read? Versus, let's get some software working, because then we'll know if we're on the right track. Same thing with customer collaboration. I learned that early on. By the time you need a contract, it's too late. That means the lawyers are probably involved. So it's much better, I learned, to build a rapport with the customer. And that gave me a lot more freedom to do the right thing, to make results happen, versus getting down into the details of a contract. And then you can imagine in the Defense Department world, I was very adept at using Gantt charts and project plans and things like that. And they're good for certain types of work, and they're horrible for other types of work, like software in many cases. And following a plan just because we wrote the plan 6 months ago is typically, in the world of software, not a good idea. So anyway, that's how I kind of think of these values, and the fact that we had a lot of humility exhibited even 21 years ago that I didn't recognize until recently when I looked at it again and thought about it. And I won't go over the principles or anything like that, but if there's anything you want to ask about or talk about, because there's a lot of good stuff in here. But what do we mean by agile mindset, and is it even a good thing to think of it that way? And I don't know per se, but I'll start off with a little quiz. I want you to think about, if we're building this piece of software, building some products, wherever you're working now, or some experiences in the past, what's the three most important things that we need to have to build a piece of software or products of any kind? What do you think is the most important ingredient for success? And you can type something in the chat if you want. Or people allowed to type in the chat? There we go. Ooh, Francis, nice. Francis is a great winner. Okay, Francis is nailing it. We're good. Collaboration, communication is good. That's often missing, isn't it? People, process, and outcomes are super important. I love that. I'm a nut about those. I've changed a lot. Yeah, money's good. Goals are good. Tools, yeah. Yeah, so it's a classic, right? People, process, and tools. And I like to say in that order, and I've been saying this for decades. It's even selling tools. That's way down on the stack of what's important. What's really important to get success. Good people will create process in the absence of it, and they'll create even tools in the absence of it, right? You don't need to wait for Scrum to be published or DSDM or anything. A good team should create these sorts of things. And what's really important is to kind of frame it all with why do we think and how do we think about these elements. And I've learned, this is something that I've picked up in the past few years from a colleague of mine, John Turley at Adaptivist. I often think of it as like a missing piece where I could have awesome success with certain teams over time. And then some teams it might be a little like, yeah, it was okay, but nothing, not quite the spark and the awesomeness that has happened before. And I wasn't always able, probably didn't have enough data points to put my finger on why. And I think some of it has to do with the different ways that people make their meaning, or the different stages of, they call it vertical development. I'm not sure why, but it has to do with how we make our meaning, how, and in our industry, there's often a lot of what we would call an expert mindset, which is very, sort of focused on expert things, not standing back, not necessarily trying to achieve something, or not strategic. So there's different ways, and you're fortunately able to, I think I've grown, you're able to grow and exercise and develop how, over time. And it's often age related. I will say, I think that might be somewhat experience, but it's not necessarily. You can have pretty awesome younger individuals just kick ass, and then you can have older folks who just seem stuck at being an expert. So just know it's possible to move, and there are different techniques to help essentially create an environment within which the team can succeed, we can succeed. And you may have heard of these terms, things like safe experimentation. And that means, really encouraging, keeping what we would call maybe the blast radius small. So you don't want someone to make an incident mistakes that takes the server down per se. But you want people to also not have to ask permission and not have a giant command and control, but rather allow enough room for people to experiment, act autonomously to get to that vision. Maybe you've got a goal in mind. Outcome, someone mentioned outcome, which is super important. And be able to have enough slack, and I don't mean the tool, but rather enough time to innovate, especially the more of us are dealing with more complex things all of the time. And the complexity is such that not one of us can keep it all in our head. But a lot of times we tackle things as if they're complicated, or they're like a machine and mechanistic. And that leads to problems. And, the mind the gap, the feedback loops are so critical in that I like to say, treat things as a hypothesis. No matter how sure you are of yourself, maybe the more sure you are of yourself, how quickly can you test that hypothesis with the least amount of effort? And you'd be shocked sometimes at how small of a piece of a feature idea that I might create and deliver and get feedback on, even though we're really, really, really sure we know where it's going to go. It's still easier to get that feedback. It's almost like getting directions in a foreign country in a foreign language. And if there's 10 steps between you and something 5 kilometers away or something like that, I know what I would ask. I'd go maybe the first one, then ask again, maybe the second one, ask, keep triangulating. And right, it's even something like that is don't go too far before you get feedback. And really, in my view, it has this might be my engineering training, very systems oriented, components, working through interfaces, treated as a much more holistic than just a bunch of siloed or components, and know that things are likely connected in some way, and understand the relationship. And then even it involves the team, because that's often teams can be really abused and misused, and whether you're breaking the product or their features into component tasks and things like that, and breaking your back end, front end, UI design, all these crazy things that I see a lot of teams do. You're just building in potential silos, bottlenecks, delays, versus thinking of it more like we're all trying to get the ball, whether it's American football, soccer, the other kind of football, the original football, or rugby or something. You're all trying to get it across the goal line. And that's where culture is really super critical. So Agile is up here. And also it starts with me. It's not for you to transform. I think of it more like yoga or rock climbing or mountain climbing, or something that it's a very personal practice. It's not for you to transform in a transformation. It has to start with me or whoever's asking it, right? It's so common to see, yeah, y'all got to transform. Meanwhile, the big layer on top of y'all is waterfall, not agile. And, you might get some benefit, but you'll never get the full benefit of everybody understanding this is holistic. So with that, do you have any, ran through that, but I wanted to give plenty of time for any types of questions. And I see Mike. Hi, Mike. So what do you think?
I'm actually speaking on mute. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have one or two things to ask, or you want to just drop some questions. Is that fine, John?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I don't want to just sit here and speak at you, but rather have a conversation with you.
Now, questions. We're happy to take as many questions. So this is good because you're going to have ample time to ask your question. That thing that you've been thinking about doing Agile, about being Agile, about the mindset, this is one of the brains behind it. So use this opportunity to ask questions.
John, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
John, there was what I call a friend of ours that actually got a job, and the job mainly is just to transform the existing team to Agile. They haven't done Agile before, so he was employed as a product owner to transform the team, and he was given a task to go and write out a plan on how he's going to carry that on. Can you give a practical example of how one can transform like an original existing team into Agile team? Thank you.
Wow, what a all-encompassing, great, wonderful question. Thank you. That's the typical, I guess, from a perspective of somebody wants this transformation. So oftentimes, there's some leadership that thinks this is a way to go. So we often, well, always try to get the step one in front of the leadership, whatever that means in this particular case. Because sometimes it's teams, it's a product, it's a whole organization, but the idea is we want some input from the people asking and try to build some relationships there. And sometimes some education, because there might be misalignment in expectation. So that's the first step, is who's asking for it, what do they see the problems are, what problems are they trying to solve, do they want to, and they'll often say things like go faster. Maybe they'll say awesome things like a better well-being for the teams. Cool. But usually it's productivity, it's efficiency. And I've been in enough places where sometimes they think the engineering team just needs to go faster. Okay, well, so that's step one. And then the next step is, all right, well, what's the value stream? Are we talking about software delivery, like how do we go from the idea to cash? So we try to focus on a value stream. Sometimes it's some software, it has to be installed. There's a fair amount of onboarding and working with the clients, and we've done that kind of a value stream. Not how do you develop the software, but how do you actually deploy it and get it into the hands of the users. So you have to pick some sort of a narrow down target of the value stream that you're trying to do. And this also works for manufacturing, frankly. But then what we do is we work, because in parallel, we're doing some of what we would call cultural stuff. So we're trying to get at a little bit, how does the network look? And by that, I mean the communication network. You might hear the term organizational network analysis. That's the people side of things that John Turley has really influenced me on. How are people's motivation orientation? Because sometimes you walk into a place very heavy command and control, and the autonomy is not so strong. And you couple that with a network structure where we've seen some that have three really strong folks where a lot of the information go through. A recent one is like one person. And it's like, whoa, boy, this is going to be a challenge. So we kind of talk to leadership. We begin a set of sort of diagnostics. You can think of them that help give a picture of the organization. And then we work on a value stream with like a cross-functional team who can answer the questions, how do you work? And that leads to all kinds of amazing things that start to pour out, like the pains, the problems. And then you're able to sort of try to reimagine, all right, if we wanted to solve these problems, the biggest pains, because some are low-hanging fruit, easy to fix by changing things, others are more difficult, but you get at least a sense of the current big impediments to transforming and getting better. And then we often have a session of ideating the future. What might be a better way to work? And to help solve the problems that we just identified. And then, all right, what's the next step we can do to try to embed some new ways of working to move us from the current state to the future state? So that's a little strategy that we employ. If that, hopefully that answered your question. And I see
we have more questions coming in. The next one is, what has been the biggest challenge in maintaining the Agile mindset, either now or in the beginning when it all started for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because it fundamentally rests on me to do my bit. And like I said, I do production code, I write bugs, I write tests and things like that. So I sometimes even find myself wishing to consult with myself on, well, that's not very good the way you're doing that. So I think it's a constant, just like continuous improvement and whatnot. It is a constant struggle that can be helped out by building some camaraderie and building some team spirit, working to help boost each other and collaborating more to be able to I try not to put myself on the critical path when working on a team and writing code and doing stuff. And then there'll be times when the team would go, okay, John, you've been sitting on that issue for a while. Do you need help? Right. So it's being vulnerable, being open, and really it's like I said, it's a team sport, giving everybody the ability to help each other recognize when we're maybe falling down a little bit or need a boost. So it's not easy. That's a good question.
Okay. And the next question is, for a fresh Agile practitioner who has no experience, what will be your first word for him as a stakeholder? Meaning that as a co-author of the Agile Manifesto, what would be your first word of advice for a new Agile practitioner?
Well, so yeah, it's interesting. I would love to think about if I read the manifesto if I read it with absolutely, what does it mean anything? If you haven't been in the industry, that's a great thought. I'll have to think about that and show it to some people. I tell you, from one of my favorite books, I happened to be asked to look at an advanced copy and proofread it and give feedback from Ron Jeffries. The hell's it called? It has like nice little drawings in it. Oh boy, Mike can probably research it as I'm sitting here whiffing on the name. But there's a great little book that if I were to write a book, it might look a lot like that book. And it's from Ron Jeffries, and it's like The Art of Software, and it's not that. But it's a real simple book, and that's what I would recommend. Is it paints a picture that it's kind of how I work in many ways, and that would give you an idea of how it could be. Because the problem is we fall into traps of thinking that certain steps are necessary when they're not. And it's really trying to understand there can be a better way, be humble, politely ask, especially when you're new. And even if I join a team, I'm not coming in there thinking I know better, because I don't. I try to learn every day. So you have to be humble, and you have to learn to ask and try to understand. And you'll look, the more opportunities you get to work and try new things. And I'm pretty much, is it fair to say I'm self-taught? But I'm an engineer by trade, but I learned software because it was cool and I started liking it, and I just kept learning it more at nighttime and things like that. I remember my wife would go off to work when I came home from engineering. I had the little baby on my lap, and I coding on an old machine and learning how to do stuff. And just to me, it's a passion, it's a love, and it's a great opportunity. But yeah, I would start with Ron Jeffries' book.
Yeah, and I'm placing an emphasis on learn to ask questions, right?
Yeah.
This is very important. John said something that we learn every day, and he doesn't know everything. But people tend to be scared of asking questions. They don't know what they don't know. Rather than asking, they will rather, hide, pretending like they do. So one strategy to getting yourself immersed in the team is asking questions. Be confident in asking questions. Feel free to ask questions, basically.
Yeah, and it goes a long way.
Okay.
So yeah.
So let's go to the next questions. How do you apply Agile to typical construction projects, like building a new facility from scratch?
Oh, that's a cool one. It's the world of, and I won't have a very perfect answer for this, but the way that the thought bubbles that form in my head are understanding sort of the relationship between the cost of change, right? So the cost of change of a line of code can be pretty inexpensive, which is why it's software. The cost of change of hardware let's say it's got embedded, like James Grenning, good friend of mine, another co-author, we hang out a lot. does, embedded C and things on chips and boards and stuff like that. Okay. In the old days, when I would do that, sometimes you burn the program on the chip, and if you needed to change it, you threw the chip away. Then we got erasable programmable. Then you could kind of do more than one thing at a time. So it's really has to do with cost of change. So understanding the fundamentals, and this is so true whether it's hardware architecture, construction architecture, I think, and maybe it's my engineering nature, or software architecture. It's really being able to understand what's the interaction between parts. What things do we need to lay down first to allow building on top of it? Obviously changing your mind about plumbing or electrical outlets or fundamental aspects. You see my wife and daughter, they go to Guatemala a lot. They do service trips, and in many countries you'll see people preparing for the second floor, even though they just built the first, with rebar, reinforced metal bars coming out, boom, ready for the second deck, but it just stops. That's kind of agile. But so it's an interesting question. I think you have to think about it from the terms of you just have to get a little further in understanding the functionality that you need, and it's a little more expensive to make changes late in the process. So you need to think a little bit harder and try to envision a little bit better what the outcomes are going to be, and understand where you can have flexibility and where you might need to make early decisions.
Okay, thank you. So we are on question number 4. Why do management hire you to come in and make some changes, but as soon as you get there and start, they want you to hold off so as not to hurt the customer? This is interesting. So you've been hired to help them become more agile, or maybe lead a transformation, and all of a sudden, they're becoming blockers.
Okay, yeah, I might understand that. One of the things that the approach that I was just talking to you about, we kind of pride ourselves in being able to kind of allow you to continue the work as we help improve the situation. So maybe that has to do with you can't stop what we're doing. You can't just come to a complete halt and we're going to spend the next whatever to get better and then start again. So I don't know if it's that sort of an angle that you're talking about, but there's sometimes certainly I see some companies where I recommend, all right, you have this core, but boy, there's some architectural opportunities. There's some ways to, I think, get out from under or technical debt, and then there's organizational debt. And sometimes you do have an opportunity, depending on how large the company is, to what I would call leapfrog, or take a team and build a new start. While this team is still working, earning money and whatnot, you're actually going past it and starting something new, including process, including architecture potentially. And that's another way to don't just stop everything, because that would hurt the customer. So maybe that's what you meant, that maybe that was an answer.
Yeah, and I think I can also add, don't stop everything kind of sounds like have a dual operating system, right? You don't want to block the revenue streams for the organization, and customer is the reason, why you're in business. So while you're trying to transform, you still need to keep some things in place so that revenue stream doesn't stop. But also you should consider having like a checkpoint, right? If you're having a constant checkpoint with your stakeholders or the management, they can tell you if you're in line with their vision and mission, or if you're not. And also you can also, you have to be customer centric, basically, right? In all of your transformation strategies, it has to be customer driven, right?
Yeah, one of the steps that I forgot to mention, I mentioned the leadership thing, and then we do the value stream. But right before maybe the very front end of the value stream, we ask, what's your business purpose? What does value mean? Because you're right, that's actually really important to always understand that, because not everybody understands value, and the more a team is fragmented or siloed, the more likely folks are just doing their piece of the pot, their piece of the puzzle, not understanding the full value. So that's another aspect of when we do this value stream, we can often find some ways to, if we change this part of your process, we can give you a little more space to work in, and then do something else and give you a little more space, and then do something else and give you, so it's sort of like driving a wedge, so there's how to kind of fix things as you're going by just giving a little, improving the small things a little bit of time, and just keep doing it, keep giving you more space, and then that leapfrog thing. So that's another way to do it, is just get you little improvements, give you some breathing room, and then reinvest it back in yourself. So but yeah, that way you don't shut everything down.
Okay, so we're moving on to question number 5. How do you successfully work with multiple teams in an agile environment?
So the way that I've kind of grown up in my career in architecting big systems that have multiple potential for multiple teams is probably because of my engineering background, but major components and the interfaces between the components. And if you understand how to sort of break down systems for multiple teams. Now, this is a very, maybe it's traditional for me. It's the way that I've been doing it for decades. That allows you add that sort of the ability for two teams to run at different speeds with an agreed to interface. That's really important for me, versus having all kinds of dependencies that you have to manage, which is a nightmare. And the other technique I use on top of this, so kind of breaking down the problem domain and the major components that you might be having to work together on. The other thing is to have a super consistent architecture, so that, how do we produce a feature? If I join your team and I'm working on one area, I would hope you have a fairly consistent way of telling me how we construct a typical feature from front to back, so to speak. And so that, coupled with having a good designed architecture, goes a long way with allowing the teams to have the smallest amount of interaction, and then be able to carry on their work, and then it plugs back together and things are working. So to me, the working on a multiple team engagement requires, I think, a good architecture, good solid foundation of how we develop. Otherwise, I'm sure the Scrum Master is wanting to pull their hair out as the dependency between teams is just outrageous, and they're running at different, because I've seen that. Ways to do it in Jira, as an example, is if you have a feature that requires multiple, let's say an epic that requires multiple features that maybe different teams need to collaborate on. So, some ways to do that is each team has their own project. The epic is in some, business project, and the epic is able to show you, all right, you need 3 things from these 3 teams and 4 things from these 4 teams. So there's ways to kind of surface how ugly it is, but my answer is to attack it with good design and good architecture, and try to minimize how messy it can get.
Yeah, and if I can chime in, you should also consider good pipeline for effective communication, because communication is everything, right? Whatever is going to make your communication to be visible, right? Whatever is going to make it to be effective and efficient, you should consider that, because that can really get chaotic when you have multiple teams. And that is the bottom line of being able to do, to understand what is meant to be done. So if you're not communicating very well, if there is no good communication channel, then that can also be a challenge as well. So we have a lot of questions, John, and I know we have about 30 more minutes.
Keep going.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is, what strategy can an organization adopt in the face of rapid changing social technology to remain competitive?
Do you know what social technology means?
Yeah.
Is that like Slack or Teams or,
So
and you can come off mute, or Francis, or
yeah, Francis, would you like to share more light on that? To shed more light on that, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Yes, yeah, exactly what you just said. You know, these days it's easier for you to get to get information through a large pool of people and to be able to make decision quicker, unlike in the past where you don't have this social technology that allows you to be able to know what trend that people are now taking in, like look at um, maybe a fashion company that you could actually see what fashion is in trend using social technology, and your ability to able to get those data and be able to quickly adapt to it so as to be competitive in the market.
okay. Well, yeah, that means like you're saying things that Agile would provide. You know, and that is also getting back to a lot of basics and fundamentals of the system you're trying to do. And to me, I'm a fanatic about the problem domain and understanding the business we're in and making the smallest types of systems that are centered around your business. Because if you're needing to move quickly, having a well-designed architecture that reflects your business, and then when the business changes or you need to make a move, my go-to technique is I'm looking at, okay, given our current model, how we currently have our systems working, is this new move we want to make, is it something, a new part of the model that we haven't touched yet, or a different way of, you know, maybe sprinkling things into existing parts of the model. And that's how I've always been able to be super fast. And getting back to that concept of leapfrogging, at times we've, like at TogetherSoft, the ideas were so radical, so to speak, or we moved, it was easier sometimes to just redesign, start over, build it again, because we had, well, number one, we had really good team, really good architecture, and that was sometimes faster than trying to morph the current system and let that system run and build another one. So just being really good at understanding your business, being able to change to meet your business needs, I think necessitates an agile architecture, a well-designed team and process and how you work. And that's how you can stay competitive, in my opinion.
Okay.
Technical debt could bankrupt you.
Absolutely. So how do you manage scope creep in a fast-moving environment where almost 40% of capacity is dedicated to ad hoc activities and the person is ready to give examples?
Yeah, hold up a stop sign. Yeah, that's I guess if I'm assuming that in this particular case, somebody's complaining, because if I assume ad hoc might mean unplanned, but it could also mean low value. I don't know, but being able to work on things rapidly could be a competitive advantage. It could be you have a team that keeps the lights on, so to speak, but you have half your capacity waiting to do, right? The problem only comes if your whole team is committed like 100%, which is stupid. If your whole team is committed to trying to deliver something and a new opportunity comes up, now what, right? You can't work. So to be able to do valuable ad hoc activities, the team needs Slack, and I don't mean the tool, as I mentioned before. And if this is a case where those ad hoc activities are not adding value but are distractions, that's a different problem. That has to do with how can you raise the visibility of, and you can, right? You could track when whatever your system is, whether it's Jira or something else. I've been using Jira forever, and it's not evil and bad. It can be configured to be a nightmare, but it can also just be a simple to-do list. But it doesn't matter. You can also just do it with sticky notes. But the point is you could track planned versus unplanned and start showing that. If people are complaining, hey, why aren't we getting such and such done? Why aren't our core features getting done? Well, because we're doing 40%, as you put, ad hoc activities. What do you expect? So yeah, show it if it's a problem.
Okay. So I think the next question came from Mike Falanga and is willing to shed more light. Mike, can you do that very quickly?
I sure can. So our company is branding itself as enterprise software company. And so there are a couple of things that I'm considering on Agile. I'll only ask about one of them. The first one is annual roadmaps, and that's already blown up. But the second one is there seems to be some fear of deploying like a hypothesis, any work to kind of figure something out, because we might have to take that away or adjust it, or it might look sloppy. I don't know what the real fear is there, but it's been a real struggle to moving fast and trying to get, close that gap. And it's been real frustrating for some teams.
Oh, I'm sure. And that gets back to the ego is in the way, right? There's undoubtedly someone's attached to, they're really, really sure of either the fear that they have or the reason to build more or things like that. So I think that sort of scenario, I would say, I would wonder, could we, I assume you probably have feature flags, the ability to do safe deployments of stuff that's hidden from everybody other than the super secret, handshake type, things like that. But I would maybe try to turn that into, are people able to express what they're afraid of, and can we somehow pull that risk forward, or figure out where are we maybe missing opportunities because of we're a little too tepid or a little too timid, maybe is a better word. Yeah, I don't know. Did that answer it, Mike? Mike and I work together. He's awesome dude. Yeah.
So Mike, you have extra privilege to reach out to John, right?
Thanks, John. This next one is mine, and it relates back to the new practitioner question, and it's a thought I've always had. Do you think that new people to the industry need to feel that pain of work gone wrong because it wasn't agile in order to get it?
That's a good question, isn't it? I don't know. I'm thinking, to people that get on a modern bicycle, not that I have, but I've seen them and they're pretty amazing, have to know what I had to ride as a kid. Maybe not. Like, this is like, oh, how about this? The seat doesn't hurt. There's shock absorbers and good brakes, and it's easy to pedal. It doesn't weigh a ton. But yeah, I think, yeah, it's sort of like, if they only ever know the good, will they not appreciate it or not recognize? Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. That's an interesting Zen-like question. Yeah, but I think from a individual development and a newbie and the question, this is if you approach this as a craft and want to be, professional, it's a lovely lifelong journey of asking questions like this, right? Mike and I have been around a long time. We don't have the answers to a lot of this stuff, but we have ways to think about it and ways to consider, testing or proposing a hypothesis or having an opportunity, even as a new person, to always think about, return on investment. Can I get better? Can I learn something new, TDD or BDD, and maybe have some playland where I can go make a big mistake and just for fun write something crappy and see what happens. I don't know. That's actually a really good question.
Yeah, I think I can, I'm looking at, I think if I'm correct, the number 12 of the Agile principles that talked about, reflection, regular intervals and team reflections and all of that. So I want to draw some insight from there, like, why do they need to feel the pain of the bad processes, right? When people have actually created checkpoints, learned from it, and made the processes to be better, right? So you're supposed to join when the processes, have been made better, or you can be part of the checkpoint to learn how to make it better, right? So I think that is what comes to mind where I can draw some strength from, right? Because if you look at that number 12, that reflection, basically Kaizen, continuous learning, continuous improvement will definitely make it a better situation for you to learn from. We don't want to learn, we want to be aware of those bad processes, but we don't want that. One of the things that I always talk about to my teams is you need to unlearn some things and you need to learn new things, right? You have to be deliberate about it, right? So for me, I wouldn't say you should come and, feel the pain. Rather, let's reflect together and make it better, or join us when it's already better, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do we apply Agile in the service industry? Oh, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yeah. So like banking.
Yeah.
That's a cool one. I think other elements besides Agile to just read about is something our son works in medical device manufacturing, titanium, crazy cool stuff with really cool machines and whatnot. There's a funny little book called 2 Second Lean that you can get the PDF for free. But if you begin to look at a few lean things in addition to Agile, I think you'll realize that even in banking, you have process, you have mortgages, you have all kinds of different, I'm sure, systems in place, and there are better or worse ways to run those, and to understand some of the techniques to realize, when something takes long to work its way through a system, and that's a problem for the bank, and you want to work faster. Even we're not talking software development, we're talking maybe the folks out on the floor or whatever it is. There's still a similar technique to, okay, from the request to the delivery of the service, what do we do? And it's easy to just get folks in a room who are doing the work to sit down and talk about that, and then realize what steps do we do. And especially if you're working kind of a siloed environment where somebody slips something under the door and you pick it up and do your piece and slip it under. If you're especially in that, I guarantee you have waste and really low bad process efficiency. So it's something to just pick up a little bit of from lean. And Agile is more about some of the feedback loops you can improve on and working with a customer and things like that. So you can definitely make some really major strides with some very simple techniques to see, all right, when you pick up the piece of paper and somebody does something on it, cool, let's track that, and then it sits for a day. Okay, right? So we spent an hour on this thing, but it took all week. Let's just say we only worked 40 hours. 4 hours out of 40 is 10%. process efficiency. I wonder what we can do about those lags. So things like that are simple ways. So I would suggest reading a little bit up on lean, and then, you know, taking a little bit of the ideas here about Agile, so to speak. So yeah, it's super, super easy, I think, to apply to service.
Okay. Agile
So I see the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agile transformation. Why do firms fail?
I'm going to guess, like the things I've seen, one organization that admittedly they didn't have super big aspirations, but they felt we could help improve their delivery. And lo and behold, after doing a value stream on one of the, it was like an insurance type company, so the benefits team, turns out that the development was about this much time of a pie graph, you know, so, and then the rest of it was trying to figure out what to do. And so when we got to that kind of, all right, here's your value stream, just like we were talking about banking, and you start mapping, you know, and people start saying, yeah, it usually takes about this long. And then it has to go to this review board, and then they often kick it back, and they only meet every Friday. Oh, there's a built-in 5-day lag. Okay, brilliant. You know, so you can often get at the root causes of why things fail. And in this particular case, it's because they're focusing on one small part. They want someone else to transform. So it became evident, look, you can speed the engineering team up by twice. Let's dream that you could double their speed, which is a stupid thing to try, but let's just pretend. It took you 8 months to decide to do 8 weeks worth of work. Who cares? Who cares if I turn that into 4 weeks? This is the other problem you have to solve. That's some, you know, so that's usually why I think it fails, is it's not brought about at a holistic level. And, you know, people are sub-optimizing part of it. I mean, okay, doubling the team speed, that's better than nothing, but it's not going to solve the problem. And it was similar, Mike, in terms of I think they've changed it now, but it was like beginning of the year, and their words, yeah, and then product brings, you know, backs up the dump truck, and, you know, and dumps a year's worth of projects on the teams. Like, yeah, okay, that's just stupid, right? I mean, people, I shouldn't say that. I wouldn't say it to anybody's face. People think they're doing the right thing. You know, nobody's coming into work thinking, hey, I think I'm going to do something stupid today. You know, it's not intentional, but it's also because they don't reflect, or they don't think about it, or they don't have another perspective, right? Like, do you think there's a better way to do this other than a year's worth of projects? Like, have you learned nothing in 20 years? Anyway, there you go.
Yeah, so just to share this quick story, I joined an organization where the transformation already failed, by the way. And I think the reason, I can just summarize it. I think the consulting firm that proposed the transformation to the organization, all they did was marketing, right? And they were very good at that marketing. So there was absolute misalignment with the objectives of the transformation. The management of the organization actually was thinking about cost reduction. So so they felt, okay, you're selling Agile to us, we're going to embark on this transformation, so probably it's going to reduce our overhead, cost is going to be, and, you know, they went down the line for several months, they realized that nothing changed. Right. And, you know, so they let go of the consultants. That was why some of us were hired, right, to come and, you know, say what we can do, how we can salvage the situation. So one of the things, so I've seen this work. This is a real experience. Misalignment in the objectives can actually make you fail. And of course, if you don't have your stakeholders buying, there is no two ways to it, right? You're not going to succeed. And also, if you're thinking about changing from the surface what I mean is, I call that cosmetics changes. All right, when you wash away the cosmetics that you apply, you still eventually
Yeah.
skin, right? If you
Yeah.
just, apply it on the surface, the problem is still going to be there, deeply rooted at the bottom, at the roots. So you have
Right.
to tackle it from the bottom.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the next question, how do we categorize waterfall versus agile development? I don't understand this question, John. I believe you do.
Oh, yeah. Well, number one, I love waterfall. I practice waterfall all the time, I like to say. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if I pick up a feature and we'll want to build something onto the app, I'll do a little bit of requirements. I'll do a little bit of design, maybe a little bit of testing, a little bit of coding, right? I mean, I might do a little tiny mini waterfall while I'm producing the feature. And that's okay. It's just the problem with traditional waterfall was the illusion of progress and the batch, right? It was a batch mentality that said, I'm going to do all of the requirements up front. And even if you're doing it, probably all of what I say is recursive, in that it can apply at a feature set, a component, a whole product, right? It doesn't matter the scale. So the problem with waterfall, I remember walking through an insurance company in Texas, USAA. This was a while back. I remember General Walker, who was, I think, an Air Force general, was a CEO. He's bringing me through, and I see like just dozens and dozens of desks, cubicles, people, and I see like they're doing like UML diagrams, use cases. I'm like, well, what are they doing? I guess a lot of people are making a lot of documentation. And I'm just kind of walking. And he goes, oh, they're reverse engineering some line of business and creating use cases. It's a 9-month project to create all the use cases. I was like, wow. Okay. Like no running code, no, just anyway, that's waterfall, a giant batch of requirements, often handed off to another company, maybe to do design and implementation, might be another company, right? I mean, that kind of waterfall is just crazy town when it comes to, the gap in time. Are you kidding me? Right? So single piece flow where I pick up a feature and deliver it. No, this is batch. So that's why it's horrible, is because it's giant, it's batch, long time frame before you get feedback. The risk is huge that you built the wrong thing. Anyway, that's the big difference. But I do agile. I mean, I do waterfall all the time in the small, maybe a couple hours, maybe a day. That's my joke. Yeah. You should all laugh. It's really fun.
And now I'm laughing.
Thank you. I'll be here all night. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So the next question is, what tips will you give a Scrum Master to further succeed in helping a high-performing Agile team in their wow stage and to ensure continuous delivery of top-notch value?
Huh. Ask what they need, because my first, I almost wanted to blurt this out, but it's might not be received properly. It was like, get out of the way. But you might be a big part of it, right? If you're doing a good job, you might be helping, kind of setting things up, keeping things rolling. But yeah, if you have a highly performing team, and I've had a couple in my day, and they're wonderful to be on. I often say that a high performing Agile team is one of the most difficult to keep in front of from a product ownership point of view, because they just can rip through stuff. And because if you build, I have a kind of a process for doing just enough modeling up front, understanding just enough of the requirements. Let's say we're building something new or a major feature set, kind of doing a little bit of work just to get a feel for what it is, what we're trying to build, what it may be some of the non-functional requirements, if it's something crazy, not just a simple web app with database backend, but something maybe highly performant requirement. Okay, it's different. But because then there's an architectural phase where I want to know how we're going to architect it. So, you get things set up right and get the deployment and everything's well oiled, man, you're just banging through the features. You get the team going, you get everybody up and running, and it's, a team we did with probably 20 some people, 200 to 300 problem domain objects for IBM manufacturing execution system, C++, thin client. Yeah, 20 to 30 people. Kicked ass, fast, but it was because it was set up very consistent. Did some upfront work just to see what it is we needed to do. Did some thin slice, get things rolling, get the deployment rolling. Even I could deploy to AS400, whatever the hell it ran on. I don't even know. I didn't need to know. So you can really get a high performing team running fast. And the biggest thing is, I would say to this particular Scrum Master is ask. It's great. It's a great thing. Enjoy it. Your next one could suck. Yeah. Try to find those good teams. They're I think rare.
Yeah, we're getting gradually to the end of this session. We have about 6 more minutes. I'm thinking we can talk about this. Yeah. So what techniques should you use to get folks to talk during retrospective?
Well, make sure that there aren't high-powered people in the room. If they are, there's a potential big problem. You got the boss in the room. Okay, I'm not going to stick, but that tells me there's a couple things. If they're not speaking up because of fear, try to get rid of whatever causes the fear, often the high-powered person in the room. And Mike probably has some good answers to this, but there's other techniques of calling on people. It's easy. TJ, what do you think?
Absolutely.
Or instead of speaking, we would often, this is something we did on the project that Mike and I worked on. You hand out the Post-it notes, and so a lot of times writing something's easier, or if it's a Miro board, you can do it anonymously on Miro, and you can even post it ahead of time. Say, here's the board, we're going to have a retro tomorrow, but here's the board. And you have, whatever goofy technique you want to use this week. And often mixing it up is fun. I would often give it to somebody, hey, Patrick, do you want to run it this week or something like that? You can also pass it around to different people, but high-powered people, making it so that speaking could be done in writing, because maybe they're not comfortable with the language. Who knows? So I would try different things, but and then ask them, if there's a couple of people, just take them to the side and say, hey, how come you're quiet? And on one in a safe environment.
Yeah, in my experience, just to add to that, I have done several things, and you need to know your team members, right? You need to know your audience. You need to know what works for them, right? I have, and I say this all the time, I have requested for an approval to take my team out for lunch. And we had a retrospective during lunch, right? We've also bought pizza, we've done all of those things and brought it to the office. I've also done a situation whereby we do something like, paint a scenario. We did like a political campaign. Come with your, poster on what you want to change about this team, and come and campaign, give us your manifesto, how you want to, make the change.
Right.
And it became all interesting. And you realize that people were kind of interested in creating their posters because they actually created some sort of fun as well, right? People drew very fantastic diagrams, and, it became a whole lot of, very interesting. Yeah.
Mix it up and have fun. That's a cool.
Have fun with it.
Yeah. Okay, I like these last two questions. I want to answer both of them. So I love the unavoidably interdependent. So I think you mean like nasty dependencies. Unavoidable is, it might be, and let's say, because there are certain dependencies that might just have to be. Excessive, of course, is bad. And there might be, this is the best we can do because of these dependencies. This just happens to be our architecture and the way we've got it set up, deal with it. So for me, it gets down to, well, again, if you did a little bit of a retrospective or a value stream on why is the dependencies a problem? I would tackle that because it could be, well, it's because we have teams running on different schedules. And so this team needs the API, or God forbid you set up a front end and a back end team, because that seems to be all the rage, which would drive me crazy. I don't know why we have to do that. But if there is, some problem because it's somebody else's stack of work versus we're trying to get this feature out the door, doesn't matter how. So if I have control over the API and the front end, I can do both. That's one way to get rid of the delay. And another way is, okay, I'm going to take my guy Mike, I'm going to put it on Teejay's API team, and the API team is going to make sure Mike doesn't screw up. This is the first time that Mike is working with the API team, but you give him the sense of the interface that he has to code to, so that he's playing nice and he doesn't screw up the API. But then after that, you agree to that, and Mike can go away and start coding that. And now he's working kind of both sides of the fence. That's another way to get rid of a potential delay. But a lot of it comes down to understanding, why do you have a delay? Like, what's the problem? If there is such a dependency, try to figure it out.
Okay, and the final one.
60 seconds to pitch a business. Just talk really fast. Way to do it. Yeah. So that's a good question. Because it's a little bit like I remember trying to, trying to pitch OO back in the day, right? That was the thing. I had to get, or use an object-oriented database. I had to pitch object. So the key, I think, is, what business problem are we trying to solve? Like, because I could probably help pitch some improvements without ever using the word agile, because that's just, you don't have to say it. It's rather pragmatic, in my opinion. And so I would suggest, if you're trying to convince somebody to adopt something that's a loaded, we would call that a loaded term, that I often say, try to align try to align the thought bubbles, like a cartoon, the bubbles above our heads. So if I say agile, it's my view of agile. It might be like TJ's, might not be like your customer or this business. So I would say, tack it from the point of view of, we're trying to achieve some better outcomes, and what are they? And then here's some ways that we can do that, like figuring out how to, maybe your problem, again, the value stream delivery, doesn't matter what you call it, but how do you currently work? Okay, let's think of some, and then, just use some of the agile techniques without saying it. Okay, let's think of ways to, maybe they're doing batch, maybe they're doing 2-week sprints forever. Like, okay, really? You're just building in a lag? Or maybe they do, coding and then QA. Like, oh my God, really? Another lag. So you could potentially pitch it more for solving a business problem, which might be trying to be more effective. All right, well, let's try to figure out, are you producing bad features, not enough features? Or, let's figure out what your problems are. And then, yeah, it'd be fun. I bet I could pitch something if I knew more about what you're trying to do in this particular business organization without ever using the word agile, because you don't have to. Oh, that's the first time I ever thought about that. But yeah, I don't think you have to. Does that answer it? I think that was Peter.
Yeah, that was Peter.
Yeah, thank you. You did.
Okay. All righty, it's 32 minutes past the hour. We don't want to keep John, longer than, because we know John is coming back to speak to us again. So
Sure.
we want the first impression to be a good one. So I have to say thank you to you, John, at this time. There are actually no other questions that I can find in the chat room, and you did justice to all of the questions. And I know you're very busy and you took out time to speak to your community. So we really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Anytime. Always enjoy helping and talking about this. Hope it was beneficial.
Absolutely, yes. And this is recorded, so we will do some editing and of course make it available to people at some point, right? And I'm definitely going to share with you. A number of people have reached out to me and they were requesting for your slide. So if you, I don't know if you want to make that.
Yeah, I'll send you the deck if for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So
Absolutely.
If you share it with me, I'm going to share it with them, right? So thank you very much for that. It's Friday. I think we should go get our drinks, our beer, and
Yeah, I smell dinner coming. Yeah.
All righty. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks for the great questions.
Yeah. We have a few trainings just in case people are interested in some of our trainings, right? You can look up to our Zeal Systems website. And you see a number of the trainings that we offer, either in SAFe or in PMP or in Scrum at Scale or in Scrum, right? So you can, grab some of those trainings. Again, thank you very much, John. And I'm going to catch up with you after this.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, John.
Good seeing you, Mike.
Thank you.
See you.
Alrighty. We'll have fun this Friday.
All right, TJ, thank you.
Thank you, Francis.
All right.
All right, TJ.
Thank you, TJ.
You're most welcome.
TJ,
Thank
can
you,
you hear
TJ.
me?
Yes. And I can see some of our Zillionaires.
Thank you, TJ.
You're welcome.
TJ, how do I get around my resume thing?
We sent an email to you. Please check your inbox or spam. Right? There's an email sent from hr@zealsystem.com. You will see how to work
Okay, I will check and then get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, TJ. It's Friday. Please send my beer.
Yeah,
Thanks,
you
TJ.
need the beer and the wine. So go help yourself, please. Make sure you have fun this Friday.
Thank you, TJ.
Right, Chris.
And TJ?
I can see you. Thank you.
TJ, can you hear me?
Thank you, TJ.
Yes, I can hear you, NK.
Thank you. Can you make the recording available via email to all the people that participated in the class?
Yeah, we'll do that after some editing, right? It might take a few days, but we have all of the emails and we'll make it, available.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
Have a nice weekend. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, TJ.
You're welcome, Kade. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, TJ. Bye.
Welcome, Adela. Bye. Okay, if you want to join our class,
Hello, TJ.
you can reach out to me on 469-835-9752, or you go to our website.
Hello, TJ.
Hi.
This is Damola from UK.
Hi, Damola.
Yes, but I'm sorry, I messaged you on your WhatsApp. I don't know if I've gotten my message, please.
I will look at it.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks, TJ.
So I wrote the number on the screen. Malby is 469-835-9752. Yeah, that's my personal number, right? You can reach out to us. I just sent it to your Zoom chat. If you guys can follow us on LinkedIn, would appreciate that. zealsystem.com. We really appreciate that if you can follow us on, excuse me, on LinkedIn. All righty, thank you everyone and enjoy. So Malby Christie, if you send a text or chat to me, I'm going to respond and I can take you through how you can enroll for any of our trainings. All right.
Okay, TJ, thank you.
You're welcome. Olumide, I can hear your voice. All right. Thank you for joining as well. I hope you learned something. All right.
Yes, I did. I did.
Good, good. So there's going to be another session, obviously, in November. Right. So we'll make the flyer available to everyone. Feel free to join. It's absolutely free. And this can actually be from Zeal Systems. So thank you, guys. It's Friday. I'm signing out.
Thank you, CJ.
You're welcome.
Very good one.